Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to From the Deep End. Good to be here with you today. Of course, Jonathan Jenkins, and we are here on usually Tuesdays and Thursdays to study the Bible together, as we tend to do. We are in a study of Second Thessalonians. Should be getting to the end of that um, pretty soon, I would think. That should be the path that we're going down. But we'll see where we go after that. Good to be with you here today. Of course, we are here at the Rockledge Church of Christ. We stream across our YouTube channel there for the Rockledge Church of Christ. Find us there if you want to. Of course, we're also across the digital Bible study platform that I'm connected to, that I've been doing for a long time. And so we're in all of those as well. Um, and that's where we stand. So that's what we do. We're here Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 1. Do appreciate y'all tuning in and being with us. Try and put the chat up there on the screen so y'all can follow along with that. Although I did make some changes on it. I've been working on the format, and that font, I don't like that font at all. I don't think I can change that font. Can I? We'll see. But do try to pay attention to those comments as you go along, as we go along rather. Um, And yeah, we'll see if that does anything. Actually, let me do that real well. This can be all messed up anyway. But yeah, that's where we go. Well, it is a lot better when I put my glasses on. I can actually read what's coming across the chat there. It's funny how when you put the reading glasses on, you can actually read. That works a lot better that way. But anyway, that's what we're doing. We're being Second Thessalonians today. Should be wrapping that up pretty quickly. Either I don't think we'll do it today because that's all of chapter three. I'll find something to get off topic about. But within the next session or two, we should be finishing up Second Thessalonians. Had somebody suggest that we go to James next, because it's one of the early epistles, goes along with the others. James, James is a good study. We could do the book of James. If you have any other comments, though, let me know. Whatever you think, whatever you feel like we should be going to next. We do tend to do Bible books here. If there were ever a Bible topic you wanted to study, I guess we could do that as well. Um, but tend to go toward a textual study as much as often. But anyway, if you have any Bible questions, any comments, go ahead and put them in. Good to see you, David and Jimmy, Tammy, Mercy, John. Cold morning there, 16 degrees here, John. There you go. No, John, I will not be attending the MSOP lectures. I will not be attending those. So, um, let me say it's been a couple years since I've been over to the MSOP lectures. Has been, but yeah, another topic for another day. But won't be heading over there. But any comments you've got, feel free to go ahead and put those in. What's going on? Y'all can hear me okay, right? See, there was an update to OBS today, and the audio mixer on OBS is changed. I am not showing a single volume level. Y'all can hear me. Please tell me y'all can hear me. Somebody give me a thumbs up or something on that. Well, you must be, because John's asking about saying the sovereignty of God would make a good study. Okay. That is so weird. OBS is not showing a single audio level from my microphone. This is what happens when you let them update the software that you're using right before you load up. Because I opened OBS this morning and it said software update. So I said, okay, update, click. And the levels have changed. But y'all can still hear me. So we're going to go with that. Okay. I have no idea why that works that way. It's visually very much different, and according to the way these audio levels used to work, y'all should not be hearing me. So we'll see. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the study here, and we'll see where we are. We are in chapter 3 of uh, Second Thessalonians today. Yep, definitely need to change that. I need to make that overlay darker there. I'm going to play around for a second. Give me just a second. See if I can't actually do something about that. Let me change that. And where is that? Let's go with the default. Let's change that. Okay. Give me a second. I am doing this on the fly with y'all. So that has to disappear. Hold on. That needs to disappear. Bye bye. Okay. And now we need to copy. And now I need to add it back in. And it's going to be all over the place when I add it back in. Now it's ready to display messages. All right. Maybe that'll work a little bit better. All right. Let's see what we got here. Let's go back over here to Second Thessalonians. All right. We just finished up um, chapter 2 as best I can last week. And for chapter 2, that's what we have. David asking, would MSOP think you're a false teacher because of a partial preterist? Not false teacher, no. No. In fact, the whole time we were doing Connect online, um, the whole time we were doing digital Bible study Connect and all that, we had instructors from the Memphis School of Preaching, or former classmates, all that kind of stuff on the chat with us. But let me say it this way: while I don't think I would be considered a false teacher. I am not anticipating ever being invited to speak on the Memphis School of Preaching lectureships. Let me just say it that way, okay? As far as I know, nobody's ever said anything to me. Nobody's ever hinted anything to me that I know of, but I'm not anticipating it anytime soon. But David, you are going down a good path. you you are going down a good path on. I'll stop there. But anyway, um, we finished up chapter 2 last week. Um, before I get too deep, sorry, my brain's just all over the place right now. No class Thursday. Okay. I've got some familial stuff I have to take care of on Thursday, so I will not be here. So no class Thursday, and then we'll be back next Tuesday then. So keep that in mind. Uh, no stream for this on Thursday. Okay. Um, as we study through the man of sin and all of that one more time, you got to come to some conclusion about it. David just talked about partial preterism. You got to work through it. Okay. And that's what I am. Frankly, that's what all of y'all are on some level. You're at least a partial preterist. I don't know anybody inside Churches of Christ that does not fall at least partially into the partial preterist world. Okay. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that language and that David put in the chat just a second ago, welcome to the show because we've talked about it a lot. All right. But it is some version of that. The one problem I think you might have from that is um, the 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 only problem, if you go full futurist, if you go full into the dispensational premillennial view and you go full futurist on this, you're going to have problems with the text. All right. Some construction though of dealing with the time statements and then dealing with the statements that sound a whole lot like second coming. You got to find a way in your exposition of it to blend it together. All right. You do. And I don't know that I have, as I said, there was some hedging I did as I went through that because I can somewhat make different levels of blending of second coming versus AD 70 work in my brain in terms of how this is pieced together. My leaning, my leaning is to go heavier toward 80 70ish because it just seems like a book that is written to a specific doctrine that is being taught in the first century to first century saints. And this may surprise you. I think it's connected to Judaistic theology. Ta-da! Paul's writing it, and I think it's about Judaistic theology. Surprise? All right, I just do. That if I have an expositional, and everybody does, my strongest expositional prejudice when it comes especially to the writings of Paul is that Paul is writing about Judaizers. Even as we get into chapter 3, the reason I'm going back over this because we're about to talk about it again in chapter 3. Right here in this first paragraph, you've got some decisions from an expositional standpoint to make here. And the point I'm going to say in these first 4 or 5 verses, it's probably Judaizers or some version of that. All right. So that's just kind of what you've got to do with it. You got to harmonize that text from an expositional standpoint. All right. From an application standpoint, you get at least a little bit more flexibility, a little more path that you can go down on it. All right. So let me just go ahead and get us into chapter 3 because as I said, some of this material, some of that I'm just talking about is going to pop back up. We'll be going right back over it in a different way, I think, but we'll be back over it here in just a second. All right. So in chapter 3, as Paul says, finally, brothers, pray for us that the word of the Lord may speed ahead and be honored. All right. That the word of the Lord may speed ahead and be honored. All right. Now, without going all the way back into that material, but you're going to be here in Acts 17 when Paul goes into Thessalonica. All right. So Thessalonica gets chased out of there, goes to Berea, goes to Athens, goes to Corinth. Somewhere along that path, sends Paul, or Timothy rather, Paul sends Timothy and Silas back to Thessalonica. At that point, then they come back to Paul, probably while he is in Corinth. Paul is in Corinth for the span of about 18 months. Um, Likely then, all of this is taking place from Corinth. He goes over to Ephesus for 2 years. So that's 3.5 years from Corinth to Ephesus. That's Exodus or Exodus. How about that? I said Ephesus and thought Exodus. That's weird. Excuse me. That is going from Corinth to Ephesus is about 3.5 years. First and Second Thessalonians are easily written during that time frame. All right, probably all the while he's in Corinth. All right, and that's probably where you go with it, as we talked about during the introduction to both books. Um, so what he's on a missionary journey, right? He's on one of his missionary journeys, starting after the Jerusalem Council there in Acts chapter 16, and so on. That's what you're dealing with, and so that's probably then what he's praying for. He's on his second missionary journey. Keep praying for us that just as happened among you, showed up and preached the gospel there. Um, Prayed that would continue. So he's asking for their help in continuing to go out and preach the word and so on. All right. Very common theme in his epistles. It says the same thing, like in Ephesians chapter 6 to the church at Ephesus, and so on. Very, very common that Paul actually requests for the prayers of it. Okay. Now, back to our potential point that I was just talking about earlier, that we may be delivered from wicked and evil men. All right. Who is that? Well, if you stop right there in the sentence, because that is the end of the sentence, there are a whole lot of evil and wicked people in the world, right? So um, why not just make that the Romans, something along those lines? Could be. Could be talking about the Romans. Might very well be talking about the Romans. Could also be talking about some national Jews, because there's plenty of evil national Jews who are part of the grouping that is causing Paul so much difficulty in places where he is. A lot going on in Corinth. If you go read Acts chapter 18, both from the Jews and from the city council and so on, although they end up helping Paul some in Corinth. Um, there's a lot of stuff going on. Easily could be that. All right. However, look at the next phrase. For not all have faith. Okay. So that would help you on some level then to identify who the evil is. The people that are evil here specifically are the people that do not have faith. So that would also then sound very much like perhaps Romans, which would fit. That would fit perfectly. It could also fit, though, national Jews. So we haven't really changed anything. Okay, that evil and wicked men are after Paul. All right. Not all have faith. I would ask you to notice, though, um, let's turn on the interlinear here for a second. Okay. Get down here and notice that for the word faith, all right, if you can see it, it looks like an N in English, usually pronounced as a long A, depending on how you were taught to pronounce Greek. I was taught that was a long A. Um, that's the definite article. That's the word the. And notice it is not in the blank or in the translation. It's not there. The word the translators left out. So likely, translational committee of the ESV, whoever did Second Thessalonians there for them, likely they were taking this to be a generic statement, a generalized statement that evil and wicked men who do not have faith, that would be a personal faith then, are the ones that are giving Paul problems. Let's see what our commentary set says. Okay. Commentary set is dispensational and Calvinist. Remember that. So let's see what he says about person that does not have faith. Okay. He says the commentator does about verse number 2. Man, my Bible program is sluggish this morning. That's not good to start being sluggish this early. The second request was for deliverance from the enemies of the gospel. Um, he says they're also being destructive of the spiritual welfare of others. The hostility of these enemies was due to their lack of faith in the message of salvation. Okay. They were wicked and evil. Um, he doesn't actually give much detail about it. Um, he just makes it a generic statement. Okay. They don't have any. Their lack of faith in the message of the gospel. That very well could be right. That could just be a blanket, universal type statement that Paul is using there to talk about everybody. Okay. I am interested though that phrase they not all have um, faith. The definite article is in the original text because it's possible he's talking here about the faith. Okay. He's talking here about the faith. which would then be, at least possibly, could be the same thing. Okay. The faith, if the faith means the gospel, could simply be just what the commentator said, that these people, their lack of faith in the message of salvation. Okay. But here's my at least the question that comes out of my expositional prejudice that I just told you a few minutes ago I have. Because of what happened in Acts 17 and who it was that openly opposed Paul in the city of Thessalonica, it was Jewish. It's national Jews, okay, before the Judaizers got there fully, but that's where it came from. So not all have the faith. See, I have a hard time changing topics completely from that which, man, my Bible program is sluggish. It's supposed to scroll. Look at how it's jumping. That is not good. That is, maybe if let me close out some stuff here real quick. Maybe I got too many tabs and stuff open. Oh, it could be that. Hold on. All right, at least that's a start. See if that helps any. Nope, it does not help any. Okay. Well, the only thing I can do would close down the Bible program and start it back up again, but I don't really want to do that right now. Anyway, it's just sluggish. I'm sorry about that. What you got there, John? John says, and pray that we may be delivered from wicked view, for not everyone holds to the faith. Okay. Berean Standard Bible. Is that Legacy Standard? Is that what you're doing there, John? You just trying to mess with my brain. You might be trying to mess with my brain, but it's there. Okay, the definite article is there in that text. But um, back up here in chapter 2, he is talking about those individuals that are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and so to be saved. And again, I have a leaning that this is connected to the events of AD 70. So this is either national Jews or it is no. There is a Berean Standard Bible for real, John. If you are messing with me right now, you could be. What is the Berean? Is that for real? I think you're messing with me, man. What is the Berean Standard Bible? I've never heard of it. I think you're messing with me. I think you're trying to pull a trick on Jonathan. I think you're trying to mess with me. Now you're gonna make me actually go look that thing up. Okay, thank you, John, for actually being serious now. What is the Berean Standard? Huh, that's a thing. Okay, John, you're not messing with me. That is actually a thing. Where's it come from? Freely shareable translation. Oh, da, 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 da. Published in 2016 by the Bible Hub. First I've ever heard of it. First I've ever heard of it. Okay, there you go. I learned something today. There you go. How about that? Back to my way of thinking again here. But point being is, um, this is another where I'm kind of hedging a little bit. I don't know that I have I'm going to have to do it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to have to do it. Give me a second. This is going to take a minute or two to get that thing to close out. You can talk to me about the Berean Standard Bible for a second, but that Bible program is just not acting right. But yeah, and now it's on the wrong side of the page. Oh yeah, that's better. Now I got things back right in the right position. Wait, that's wrong. I have done this before. I really have. I promise. I have done a live stream before. All right, now look at this. See how much better that is? Oh, see now I can actually scroll through. There we go. That's what it wasn't doing. Okay. Whew, that was messing me up. But anyway, um, so what do you do with that? Uh, in terms of keeping it simple, just what we read, our commentator. It's one of the few times I'm not going to argue with the commentator. I argue with this dude all the time. I don't really have a strong argument here. Okay, hostility's enemy was due to their lack of faith in the message of salvation. Great, good statement. Now, where does that come from? Application wise, it doesn't really make that much difference. Exposition, it does make some difference. All right, and with what's going on in the city of Thessalonica, I would make it Jewish. But then again, that's my expositional prejudice as I look at things. So I don't really have a, you know, it's because of that word appearing in that text, other than perhaps the word "the," which doesn't appear in the ESV. Um, I don't really have a strong expositional argument for saying that it's Jewish, other than the broader context of Acts 17, even into Acts 18, and some of the things that are going on there. So take that for what it's worth. All right. But then he says in verse 3, but the Lord is faithful. All right. They don't have the faith, but of course the Lord is faithful. And he will establish you and guard you against the evil one. Okay. Again, that would go back to, at least in part, all the things that are going back up here in chapter 2, this mystery of iniquity that is already at work, and the lawless one who is coming, and the activity of Satan with all the powers and signs and false wonders. Um, that would be very fitting down here as well, that he will establish and guard you against the evil one. Okay. Now, assuming we take the evil one to be a reference probably to Satan, notice the ESV, I just pulled it up there for you. Notice the ESV's marginal note just says evil. Okay. Um, and the ESV translators did not capitalize that to be a direct, perhaps, statement to Satan. So take that for what it's worth. Interesting. What would the commentator say? I haven't read this ahead. I don't know what he's about to say here. Let's get down here into verse number 3. I bet he goes Satan. No, he doesn't. Well, wait a minute. Okay. Um, to withstand temptations and trials and protections from the adversary and his emissaries. Oh, he does go Satan a little bit then. Um, evil men. Okay. That's about the point I was just about to make. Um, he puts it back to the cross reference there, if you will, is back into verse number 2. Okay. Uh, with the evil one. So you just make that connection, that comparison there between the evil men, the wicked and evil men of verse 2, and the evil or the evil one of verse 3. But it seems to me this commentator does go down the path of the adversary and his emissaries, that maybe the adversary might be Satan. Or it could be that there is a ringleader of whoever is opposing Paul. All right. But either way you do that, at least with that, when you keep all that lowercase and you don't make a direct call out to Satan, if the evil one or the evil of verse 3 is singular, if it's singular, then it could be just like in Galatians chapter 5, where Paul says, um, in Galatians 5, is that verse? I want to say it's verse 10. Um, the one who is troubling you will bear the penalty. All right. There's obviously more than one involved in troubling the Galatian churches. See that there's more than that individual. but he does talk here about the one, so probably the ringleader. All right, if that's to be taken with specificity, which I think it probably is, um, there's a ringleader going on. There's somebody that's he's the he's the ringleader. Okay, in which case then that could be what he's talking about here in verse 3, which would then perhaps be connected to the wicked and evil men in verse 2. Now, geographically, that likely would be in a different spot. Unless the evil one, if it is a human, has his tentacles extending beyond the city of Thessalonica down to Corinth or Ephesus or wherever you want to put Paul right now, or the other direction round, where maybe it's in Corinth or Ephesus, since those are larger cities, back to Thessalonica. Um, or it could be that the evil one could actually be Satan. The adversary could actually be Satan, and then these are his emissaries. That would be the super apostles and so on of 2 Corinthians 11 and 12 and so on. Or at least be in relationship to them, not necessarily the same people. All right. Um, whichever way you go with that, there you go. All right. I don't know again, I don't really have a hard fix on this. Um, if this is just what that commentator seemed to be alluding to, once again, if there is a connection, if the evil one is a person, and that person seems to be located in Thessalonica, because I know what's going on in Thessalonica, it's Jewish. That's clear from Acts 17. So here again, my expositional prejudice comes out. I'm going to make this probably about Judaizers. Could be national Jews, but at the very least, it's going to be inclusive of Judaizers, and I think might actually be about Judaizers. Okay, in which case, if that's the break, then I would then say that not all have the faith, because what some of them have is not the faith, but what some of them have is they are there and they are preaching a different gospel. They're not preaching the faith. They are preaching a different gospel, the Judaistic gospel. That's what they're teaching. And Paul is there. That is, and so he's opposing it. That would be the direction that you would go with that, if that is who that is talking about. All right? Could be elsewhere. Could just be a generalized statement, and it would still be true. Nothing would change. In terms of certainly how you would get to the application for us today, nothing's going to change. All right? Because guess what? God has the ability to establish and guard against the evil one, whoever that be it Satan or be one of his minions or be it personal, whatever. If you want to make that application, all of that will be true. Absolutely. Um, I do think if you go that path, while you don't do any doctrinal damage, I do think you do weaken the exposition of the text, because he says he will establish you and guard you. All right, there is that, and sometimes I think we miss this collectively. We miss this in the study of the New Testament, because you are going through not just the geographical growth of the church. The gospel needs to go to the whole world. You'll be my witnesses, Jerusalem, Samaria, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the uttermost parts of the earth. Acts 1:8. Okay. It's not just a geographic expansion. It is, especially with what's going on here. Go back to chapter 2 about the first fruits that we talked about, I guess, last time together, maybe 2 times ago. We are now into Southern Europe. We're coming out of the Jerusalem Council, Acts 15. That took us to Philippi, Acts 16. Thessalonica, Berea, Athens, Acts 17. We're now into Southern Europe. We're expanding geographically, but we're also expanding by bringing the Gentiles fully into the church. We are working through the finishing of the mystery of God. The plan to unite all things in heaven and in earth in the one body of Jesus Christ. How? By Jews and Gentiles being fellow heirs of the same body and partakers of the promise by the gospel. Ephesians 3:6. That's what we're working through right there. It is unification of Jew and Gentile in the body and so on. And so you have this idea of, let's go to First Peter. 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1 is that there is for you, the Christian, the elect exiles of the dispersion, you've been born again to a living hope, okay, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is imperishable and undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for you, who by God's power being guarded, He's able to establish and to guard you through faith for a salvation. Okay, I can almost guarantee you. Here's one of my almost guarantee you stickers. If you heard that preached anywhere, or if you were teaching this yourself, likely you'd start talking right about there about heaven, because here is an unperishable, undefiled, unfading inheritance kept in heaven. Okay, that's about what you're about to do with it, and you are then being guarded. Well, what are you being guarded against? Power of Satan? Okay. But then notice what he says. It is ready to be revealed in the last time. So you're about to make that salvation that's going to be revealed second coming. Or if you're dispensational premillennialist, you're going to make it about the rapture or something. It's a futurist position. Okay, this is where my partial preterist mind comes back out. I don't think that has a thing in the world to do with the second coming. Not one thing. Because through faith for a salvation has already been revealed. Salvation through faith for all of humanity has already been revealed. And it is salvation through faith. What's the other option? See, this is where your dispensational friends, your Calvinistic evangelical friends go off the rails. Because they'll start immediately talking about, well, see, it's a salvation by faith versus a salvation by works. And what they mean by works is any kind of human activity whatsoever. That's flat out wrong. Okay? You're being guarded through faith for a salvation. See, this is tied directly to Judaism, tied to Judaistic theology. Look at verse 6. In this you rejoice, in this, a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. You rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, and it is, you're going to be grieved with various trials. Okay? Keep going with me. All the way down into chapter 4. I should have just clicked. I'm scrolling because I can scroll again. Yeah, I'm clicking because I'm still in chapter 2. All the way down to chapter 4. Okay? Is ready to be revealed at the last time, right? The end of all things is at hand. That might be connected to the last time, and that is at hand. What is the end of all things? Well, it's the fullness of time had come. Galatians 4. Plan for the fullness of time to unite all things in heaven and earth according to the mystery of the purpose of the counsel of his will. Ephesians chapter 1, that's several verses just thrown together. The mystery of his will. Chapter 3, verse 6 of Ephesians, Jew and Gentile in one body. End of all things is at hand. Okay? That's important because the fiery trial is coming upon you. ESV says when it comes. It's a present participle, right? It's a present participle. Okay? Then he says, for it is time for judgment to begin at the household of God. So you need to be guarded. You need to be so on. Keep going with me. There's a reason I went to 1 Peter, down into chapter 5. Okay? Chapter 5. Be sober, be minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Could that be the evil one in 2 Thessalonians? Could be. Resist him, knowing that the same kind of sufferings are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. Okay? That could be the great tribulation of Matthew 24, and it is. And after you have suffered a little while, well, there it is again, because why? The end of all things is at hand. Time has come, judgment once again at the house of God. You need to the salvation through faith a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. The God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. He will guard you against the evil one and establish you. This is first century. You see, the church as a whole needs to be established. Now, as an entity, it was established in Acts 2. The gates of hell shall not prevail against my church. It was established in Acts 2. Now, it's not, the mystery of God is not finished, Revelation 10, until the sounding of the trumpet, the sounding of the trumpet of the seventh angel, 10:7. Okay, this is Daniel 7, the break in between the glorification of the Christ and the people. Daniel 7:14-ish down to about Daniel, 7:26, 7:27 to get to the saints. The little horn stands between those two things. That's again the book of Revelation. Another reason I early date Revelation, because it all fits together. When is this being done? When the mystery of God is being finished, which would tie directly to Babylon, who has across her forehead mystery, which would apply directly to, the mystery of lawlessness, which is working against the mystery of godliness. So that's what I would do with all this. All right. So word by word through here. If you take that to mean just God, when you encounter evil and wicked people who are not people of faith, God will never leave you, and he will establish and guard you against the evil one. And well, Paul's going to talk about the saints here in just a second, but during that period of time, if that's how you understand that passage, and then when you make application of that text to you, okay, um, Loretta, well, Loretta, back from Grenada, good to have you here, Miss Loretta. Good to see you. I could never remember. I always wanted to put you in. Was it Trinidad and Tobago? I always wanted to put you in, which is not particularly close to Grenada. That's not particularly close. I think that's what I always used to do with you. But good to see you, Loretta. Now that I said that, I'm still going to do it. I need to think Grenada, 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 Grenada. Put it in my brain. Lock it in. But I always used to do it all the time. Anyway, um, but if that yeah, that use here does is just talking about, if you take that as a universal, always true statement, okay, that there are always going to be evil and wicked people in the world who do not have faith. And during those periods of trial, God will deliver you from those. He will be faithful, and if you obviously you need to remain faithful. And in the end of that, you will be guarded against the evil one. Your faith will remain intact. You will not wander away, any of those things. You will be established. Your faith will be confirmed. Is there anything untrue about that? Not one word. All right. And if John's here with me this morning, if John were up preaching this text, and I don't know what John would do with this text, but at some point you got to make an application of the verses, right? Even if you have what I'm doing as the exposition of it, at some point you got to make an application of the passage to the people you're preaching to, right? And so some version of that would likely be the application that John would make of it. Okay. To which I would say, Amen. Great. That's a great statement to make. Okay. But I don't think that's what the text is talking about. I think Paul's making a very specific argument about the establishment of the saints, and that's why I went to First Peter 5, because I think it's the same argument that Paul or Peter's making rather in First Peter 5. And that is tied to the completion of the fullness of time, the completion of the mystery, and so on. Which all of that, go back to chapter 2 and the mystery of lawlessness, is another reason I lean heavily toward chapter 2 being about the events of AD 70. Okay, I think we just the bigger other than just discussing the particular exposition of the different verses here, what I want you to get, the bigger picture that I want you to get is, as I say all the time, I'm not after your agreement, I'm after your understanding. Okay, because I don't always agree with myself about the specific meaning of a time statement or something like that through the New Testament. I don't. Okay, as it's Tuesday right now, ask me Thursday, and I might change my mind about it. Okay, it's possible. But what I don't want you to pass over is where I kind of started this little portion of the diatribe, which is that I don't think we, and we by we I mean a lot of modern students, but especially those of us in churches of Christ, I don't think we take enough time to consider that there is still something within the plan of redemption, within God's eternal purpose, that is structurally still at work in the New Testament. Because we kind of get the church started in Acts 2, and by Acts 10, the Gentiles are included. Okay, Acts 2, Acts 10. By that point, what's coming next? Well, we will acknowledge that Jerusalem needed to be destroyed, that it was going to be destroyed, that, so on and so forth. But as a structural marker, we don't really have it as a structural marker. We kind of go, maybe we talk about Acts 10, but what we kind of do is the church is established in Acts 2, and the next big event is the second coming. That's kind of how we do it. Now, even late daters who talk about the fall of the Roman Empire and so on, my experience in hearing people who late date John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, Revelation, and maybe Jude. Okay, those 6 books. All right. They have Revelation dealing with the fall of the Roman Empire. Most of them point it down to AD 476 when the actual city of Rome fell. Okay. Occasionally you might hear somebody talk about the 4th century, not the 5th, 4th century, where Rome as a pagan entity succumbed to the influence of Christianity, such as it was in the 4th century. Edict of Milan, Edict of Toleration, Constantine's time, all of that. Okay? But still, that's Revelation. Usually 476. That's the more common view because you got to get rid of Babylon, and Babylon in their mind is Rome. You got to get rid of it. But what you don't hear a lot of is, as we discuss things like Second Thessalonians, or even to maybe make a tighter point, go back to First Peter 5 verse 10. Okay, after you've suffered a little while. Okay, unless you are having some kind of eschatological discussion, unless you're doing the discussion that we're doing here. If I heard most gospel preachers I could think of, late date gospel preachers that I know, and they were just preaching this text, I don't know that they would ever spend the time talking about how the little while of 1 Peter 5 could be the same as the short things that must shortly come to pass of Revelation chapter 1 and make the connection. Okay? And I tell you this, if you're part of the Rockledge Church of Christ, I'm about to get myself in trouble with you in the next week or two as we study 1 Peter, because we're about to be in 1 Peter 5. I'm about to get myself in trouble with you over the next couple of classes. And I'm going to tell you why right now. Because here is something we never do. Be sober, be mindful, be watchful. Your adversary prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Okay? Have you ever heard a gospel preacher say anything other than that is the nominative case for all Christians for all time, every single day of your life? Okay, for David S. and John, who were talking about me and MSOP earlier, you really want to know where me gets thrown out by some of the MSOP guys? It's right here. Because I don't think that's the case. I do not think, as this verse is written, hear how I just said that. As this verse is written and what was being talked about in this verse, that is no longer happening. Because he says that's happening, and after you have suffered a little while, you shall be called to his eternal glory, restored, confirmed, strengthened, and established, dominion forever and ever. Okay, that is not the second coming. It's a little while, eternal glory. Oh, that would be the glorification of Romans 8. Frankly, that'd be the glorification of Revelation 19. It would certainly be the glorification of Daniel 7. Okay? What other passage in your New Testament, particularly in the context of things we're talking about today, what passage does that sound the most like? That there is a roaring lion, really angry, hungry, seeking something, da 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 da. Any other passage come to your mind that might be somewhat similar to that? Now is come salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ, they have come. When did salvation and the power, Acts 1, and the kingdom, Acts 2, of Christ, having received of the Father the promise of the Holy Spirit, he is therefore being by the right hand of God exalted, Daniel 7:14. Having received of the Father the promise of the Holy Spirit, when the Son of Man returned to the Ancient of Days, there was given him glory, dominion, and the greatness of a kingdom. This is Daniel 7:14. This is Acts 1 and 2. This is not pre-creation. This has nothing to do with the origin of Satan. The word is right there. Now. Not before. Now. Satan has been cast down to the earth. He can no longer go to heaven and make accusation. He's been accusing them night and day before our God. Read the book of Job. That's what it is. Okay? So you in heaven, you can rejoice because he's not there. But woe to you who are on the earth and the sea, because the devil, that serpent that's earlier, the dragon, the serpent, devil, has come down to you in great wrath. You know, he's walking around like a roaring lion because he knows that his time is short. After you have suffered, chapter 1 of First Peter, ready to be revealed at the last time, if though necessary you have to suffer, and you do, because time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. So woe to you who are on the earth. It's coming. He's really mad because he knows now he's running out of time. You know, this is a book about things which must shortly come to pass. To the point that Paul then tells the Romans in Romans chapter 16, he says, the God of all peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. Soon. Short time. Little while. This is why I'm a heavy preterist. Okay, but here's the point that I'm making. All right, we'll talk more about that. Y'all can be really grumpy with me when we get to that in First Peter chapter 5 here at Rockledge. Okay? But here's the point I was making. This is what we don't do very well inside churches of Christ. After you have suffered a little while, next time you listen to a gospel preacher preach this text, another one of my almost guarantee stickers. I'll almost guarantee you, unless we're in the context of what I was just talking about, the whole thing that we just went through right now will not come up. Because if that which must shortly come to pass in Revelation is about the fall of the Roman Empire, if that were my position, I would have to think that the little while here is about the fall of the Roman Empire. But see, we don't do that. What we do is we tend to think Acts 2, second coming. And we don't pay enough attention to what's going on there. The establishment of the church as the kingdom of Daniel 2, the glorified kingdom of Daniel 7. That's not accomplished in Acts 2. There's a gap between Daniel 7:14 and Daniel 7:27. And Daniel 7:27 is far and away removed from the second coming. At best, for you late daters, no earlier than the reign of Domitian, no later than the fall of Rome in AD 476. That little horn has to fall into that spectrum. And it's not that I disagree doctrinally with the late date crowd. It's that I disagree with the emphasis of your expositional model. That's what I disagree with. Because I early date, that has to be AD 70. Suffering a little while is not a generalized statement about everything that's going on in this world. Okay? Ephesians 6, where Paul says about the whole armor of God, you need to put on the whole armor of God to be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. What scheme? What schemes? I mean, if I were just to ask you, what schemes? Late date, early date, what schemes? I know I know how you're going to apply that verse. I know what you're going to do. The schemes of the devil against me. He's out there every day tempting me. Okay? We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers and authorities and powers and over the cosmic powers. Okay? I know what you're going to do with that text. I know exactly what you're going to do with that text. The evils that are in this world. If you're an evangelical premillennialist, this is about the geopolitical spectrum. This is about things going on in Iran, down the Strait of Hormuz, all that kind of. That's what you're going to do with it. Okay. This present darkness, and it's coming up on the evil day. See, this present darkness and these cosmic powers that we are ruling against, from not flesh and blood, but against powers in the heavenly places. That's Revelation 12. That's exactly what's going on in Revelation 12. This present darkness and the evil day, I'm sorry, you can't separate that from the book of Revelation. And I will give at least dispensational premillennialist credit here, because that's what they would do with it. They would take Ephesians 6 and connect it to the coming millennium and the great tribulation that's going to start in the Middle East somewhere. That's what they would at least be expositionally consistent. Flat out wrong, but at least they'd be expositionally consistent about it. When was the last time you heard somebody teach this text? And their conclusion was this is about the fall of Rome in AD 476. I've never heard that. Of all the wonderful gospel preachers I know, probably 75% of them late date stuff. Made up that number, but I bet it's not far from wrong. And I've never heard a single one of them connect this to AD 476. It's post Acts 2, it's prior to the second coming. So this is just Satan out in the world working and causing us problems. I can't do that. If I were a late dater, this would be the fall of Rome. Here's why. Because we are wrestling against not flesh and blood, but against rulers and authorities and cosmic powers. We are still doing that. The contemporary book of Colossians, of Ephesians, is Colossians. Okay, both prison epistles written to cities in the same geographic location, roughly, and the themes in the book are very much parallel. Okay, chapter 2 of Colossians. Don't let anyone take you into and lead you astray by empty deceit and human traditions, according to the elemental principles of the world. Okay, that's Judaistic theology, by the way. God has taken Jesus has taken out the handling the record of debts that stood against us with its legal demands, nailing it to the cross. He has disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to an open shame. Now wait a minute, how has he done that? We're still wrestling against them. How has he put the rulers and authorities to an open shame when that's exactly who we're arguing against, or fighting against in this present darkness for the evil day? How does Colossians put it in the past tense? How does Ephesians put it in the present tense? There's a simple answer to it. It's a very simple answer to it. I saw in the night visions, one like the Son of Man came to the Ancient of Days and was given to him dominion, glory, and kingdom, and so on. That's Acts 2. Down here is down at the end. I've been saying verse 27, when the little horn is defeated. Okay, the little horn is defeated. Verse number 27, the dominion and the kingdom, dominion, and the greatness of the kingdom shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. That's after the defeat of the little horn. That's a gap. Kingdom and dominion and greatness of the kingdom isn't given to the saints until the defeat of the little horn. That's not Acts 2. That's Revelation. That is the theme. That is the content of the book of Revelation. So you have one of three options. Dispensational premillennialism, this has not happened yet. That's wrong. Your other option is fall of the Roman Empire, in which case it has happened, but it did not happen until AD 476. In which case, then, what I have is Jesus having glory, dominion, and great power, starting in Acts 2. Peter says so. The saints not having dominion, power, dominion, kingdom, and great power until AD 476. Or here's your third option. It is the unification of Jew and Gentile when Titus or Vespasian, whichever one you want to go with, enters into Jerusalem, destroys the temple, and guess what does not happen? The worship of Jehovah does not stop. In fact, what happens is that mountain, that stone that is cut without hands, destroys, not physically, but systemically, exalts itself above all of the kingdoms of this world. Revelation 11:15, the kingdoms of this world are now the kingdom of our Christ, because you can be a citizen of any kingdom and still be a part of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Not just Jewish. You could be Roman, you could be Cappadocian, you could be from Bithynia, you could be from where Paul's going to Spain, you could be from anywhere, because the kingdoms of this world now belong to Jesus. Because everybody is now unified in heaven and in earth, where he has all authority. Everything is unified in the one singular plan and purpose of God. The exclamation point on that was the completion of the events of the book of Revelation. It's either AD 70 or AD 476. It's not dispensational premillennialism today. Sorry, it's not. Your other two options are AD 70 and AD 476. Those are the two views that we have. My complaint is I'm not trying to give you an argument today about early date, late date, although it should be early date. That's not my point. Please understand, not my point today. If what you're hearing is an argument for the early date today, you're hearing me wrong. Now, you're hearing me right in the sense that that's my position. Yes. But if that's what you're hearing right now, you're not hearing what I'm saying. You're not hearing the point that I'm trying to get you to make. Because as I started this, however many minutes ago it was, I started this whole discussion. I said, this is not about agreement. It is not. Okay. At some point during this diatribe that I'm going down, I made the point that if you take this language here and you make it a statement, you have done nothing wrong doctrinally. Okay. If you take this about God guarding you and about from the evil one, establishing your faith, delivering you, and so on, if you take that and make a generalized statement and from that you draw hope and faith, or hope and trust rather, in your faith, praise God. You would be 100% doctrinally right in so doing, because guess what? God is still God. God is still, the Lord is still faithful. All of that would be dead flat true. So I had this. If you hear me trying to take away your application of the text, you're not hearing me right. I would say if you hear me right, I would take away the need that you think you have for the application of this text. Another topic for another day, but not the actual application. That verse applied to you directly should provide you with peace and comfort in your faith. It ought to. Okay? What I'm trying to get you to see today is where I started this whole thing way, way, way back when I first started going down this path was, here's what we don't do very well inside churches of Christ. Not an application problem, not even really a doctrinal problem, but having what, at least what I consider to be the expositional discipline that it takes. And if I have any other than John, if I have any other preaching brethren out there who are listening today, because we got Sunday morning, my sermon started at about 10:35, which means to get to the top of the hour, I had 25 minutes. I went to about 12 after, so I went 37 minutes, roughly. I could be off a few minutes there, but about 37 minutes is how long I preached on Sunday morning, plus or minus. Okay? You know how hard it is? And I left, you know how much stuff I left out in my sermon? I had to gut. I was in Luke 11. I had to gut a bunch of the stuff I was going to try and say. You know why? Because you can't keep them there till 12:15 when you should be stopping somewhere closer to 11 flat. You can't. Okay, they'll act like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. You do that long enough, they're going to grumpy. Well, you got to stop at some point. Guess what gets cut? In order to get that sermon from 10:35 down to somewhere close to the top of the hour, guess what gets cut out of the sermon? Every single time. Guess what gets cut out of the sermon? Exposition. That's what gets cut out of the sermon. We do it in our classes too. You got 12, 13 weeks to go through a quarter, because it's 13 weeks, but there's always one special week, and just boom. So you got 13 weeks to get through this text that you're studying. Really, you have 12, maybe 11 sometimes. And you got 3 chapters, 5 chapters, whatever you got to get through. So guess what you end up doing? You cut out the exposition. And so we are as guilty as anybody of not taking the time to go through these discussions. And so we come to a passage like Ephesians chapter 6 and the whole armor of God. This present darkness, we'll just talk about the evil that's in the world. Because guess what? There's evil in the world. And when we talk about the evil day, we end up talking about, oh, just bad days are going to come. There's, da, 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 da. Sometimes Satan comes after you or whatever. We make the evil day, we personalize it. We either generalize it. Well, we generalize it in that this is the condition of the world. We live in a dark, evil world. And then we personalize it because each one of us is going to have our evil day. That's how we preach it. That is all application oriented. This present darkness and the evil day is either the second coming, AD 476, or AD 70. This is not a generalized text because you have to harmonize Ephesians 6 and Colossians 2. And lo and behold, that falls right along Daniel 7 and Daniel 2. And frankly, Daniel 9 and Daniel 12. It falls right in place. It falls right along with the short time that Peter writes to the church at Ephesus because it's written to Asia. It's written to the same people. Little while, so on. Do the expositional work. And herein, if I am going to point a finger at some of the brethren directly, if you're a late dater, I just never hear y'all talk about it. If I were a late dater, I could not. Knowing how I study the Bible, I could not make that anything other than AD 476. And I would do the same thing back when we studied Galatians, because it's there in Galatians. What is it, verse 1, 2, 4? That's close. 4. From the present evil age. That's either AD 70 or that's AD 476. That is not the general statement because we are Hebrews chapter 9 at the end of the ages. 1 Corinthians 10, we're at the end of the ages. And that word present was not added accidentally. To which John would then say in 1 John chapter 2 that there's this brother that's still in darkness. There is this darkness because this darkness has blinded the world. Okay. Where is it? It's 11 that I want. Where is it? I thought it was 12. No, it's 8. Boy, I was so close. Because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. You know why? Because the mystery of God is almost finished. That's why he says down here in verse number 18, it is the last hour. I'm sorry. That's AD 70. If this is a late date book, that's AD no later than AD 476. We don't do it well. We go straight from Acts 2 to the second coming. We need to do it better. We just need to do it better. All right. What you got down there, David? You and us enjoy a short study of Revelation 11. Revelation that shown the temple was still there, so that the book would have to have an early date. Think about it. I think Revelation 11 is a very strong argument for the early date. I do. Because otherwise, you really have to spiritualize it somehow. And when John wrote it, it had already been fallen for 27 years. Well, 26 years, whatever date you get, 25 to 30 years. It's already dead. It's gone. And there's no mention of it anywhere in the book of Revelation that it's gone. Yeah, I think chapter 11 is a very strong argument for the early date. But and I don't have time to go. I don't say I don't have time. I guess I do. I could go down that path, but I don't really. That was not my intention to go down early date, late date arguments today. Okay, but I will say that verse 11:15. That is the passage I can't get past AD 70. If I had to make if I had to make a single argument, well, maybe not single, but on my top 5 list, verse 11:15. The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and Christ and his reign, and he shall reign forever and ever. When did that happen? When did the kingdom of the world become the kingdom of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? 80/70 is what place that fits. It's the unification of Jew and Gentile. I have no idea how the fall of the Roman Empire makes that true. And it certainly is not dispensational premillennialist that this has not happened yet. Unless you think that Jesus is actually going to set up a physical kingdom. I guess they technically do. But no, this is the fulfillment of Daniel 2. And I'm sorry, AD 476 does not fulfill Daniel 2. Just doesn't. Anyway, another topic for another day. Point I was trying to make today is not to get us pigeonholed into a early date, late date thing. All right. This all came as I was thinking about chapter 3 for this class. All of that we just went over the last hour and however long was all on what are you going to do with these first 5 verses of chapter 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Okay. What are you going to do with these first 5 verses? You're dealing with the wicked and evil men. You're dealing with people having not faith or not having the faith. You're dealing with the establishment and the guarding against the evil one. All right. Application orientation, if that's your path. If what you're looking for is I'm reading this passage is in my daily Bible reading today, and I need to make a devotional connection to this text, the one that you would normally make. All right, you're just and that's what this is. If you're reading as a devotional period of your day, all right, like I said, daily Bible reading, or you just happen to open your Bible and bang 2 Thessalonians 3 pops up, and you're just trying to find yourself something to help you think about God today. The application you would make of this text is perfectly wonderful and good and fine, and it will be helpful to you. Okay? I will say, though, the downside of it is if the evil one, and that's how you would read it, typically when you're being guarded against, as the ESV translates it, the evil one, even though there's no capitalization there, your tendency is going to be to make that Satan. And if you take the application without the exposition, you're going to walk around thinking that Satan is out there trying to get to you personally today. Now, if you're a member of the Rockledge congregation here, this is where you're going to be grumpy with me as we get to it in First Peter, because I don't think that's happening. I can argue with myself, and I do from time to time, about the degree to which that Satan has been limited. But Satan has been limited. Paul said Satan will soon be crushed under your feet. Romans 16:20. Soon crushed. That's a big deal. Jesus came to render him idle. If Hebrews chapter 2. Okay? And we'll talk more about that on Wednesday night class when we actually get down there, probably next week. I don't think we'll get there all the way this week. Okay? But the ramifications of those verses and the 1,000-year binding of Satan in Revelation 20, the ramifications of those verses are huge. Okay? I'm not saying Satan is dead. I'm not saying that there's no, at the very least, representation of Satan in this world. That's not the point that I'm making. But see, what we do when we go straight to application and we kind of skip over or minimize the expositional impact of this is that we take statements like that or 1 Peter 5 and we act as if what we've read about in our Bible, be it Job or be it the Garden of Eden or Satan's appearance in the book of Zechariah or the lying spirits, well, that's not technically going to be Satan, but the lying spirits in the days of Micaiah into Second Kings. Not the end of Second Kings, excuse me. Into First Kings. It's 22, right? I think that's right. Micaiah, Ahab, just Jehoshaphat, lion spirits. What we do is every time we come across Satan tempting Jesus in the wilderness, whatever it be, Satan entering Judas, Satan coming after Peter, and the immediate application that we make is that that's what's going on in my life. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard Christians say something along the lines when they are having a tough day or something, and they say, well, Satan's after me today. Look, at least as an adult, as my own Bible student, guess how many times I have uttered the phrase or had the thought, man, Satan's after me today. Never. I never say that. I never think that. You probably do. I don't. Now, I can tell you the result of that. The result of that is I live a lot more peaceful life than you do. Not in terms of the stuff that happens to me, because the same stuff happens to me that happens to you, but my interpretation of the events that are happening. Because you think you're wrestling against not flesh and blood. You think you're wrestling against principalities and powers in the heavenly places. I don't. Satan's defeated. Gates of hell shall never prevail against the kingdom of Jesus Christ. When something bad happens to me in this world, it's still bad. It still stinks. But you know what I don't do with it? I don't then turn around and try to interpret the tea leaves of it. I don't try to find the hidden meaning or the hidden cause or so on. Never been audited by the IRS, but if I got audited by the IRS, I wouldn't start wondering, well, what happened here? What's it? No, it's just my number popped up. They audit X percentage of people every year, and depending on how much income you make, you get audited at different rates. Okay, ta-da! My year. There's no scheme. There's no plan. There's no nothing. It just happened. Okay, Satan doesn't have the power to pick a random number and make me the one that gets picked. Nope. I can't tell you how many Christians I've heard talk about stuff like that. Okay, you either get cancer, you don't cancer. You know why you get cancer, you don't get cancer? Genetics and how you lived your life. Probably mostly genetics. Okay, that's how it happens. That's why when you sit down at a doctor's office, first thing that doctor starts asking you about is this. Well, do you have any history of heart disease in your family? Do you have any history of colon cancer? Do you have any history? Because guess what they're trying to figure out? Your genetics. It's not a lesson God's trying to teach you. It's not Satan putting something down. It's genetics or whatever else might be the other factors involved there. And it's the same for Christians and non-Christians. Is the world full of evil? Absolutely. The world's full of evil and sinfulness. Is Satan responsible for that? Go back to the garden. He certainly played his part. But what you're reading about in the Bible is Satan working in the parable of the wheat and the tares, Matthew 13. Let me see it. Let me show it to you. It is Matthew 13, right? Parable of the sower we read all the time. Parable of the tares has got to be sower explained there. Parable of the weeds, ESV renders it. Kingdom of heaven, man goes out and sows good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came in and sowed weeds. His enemy. His enemy is the enemy of the man who sowed good seed in his field. Now scroll on down. The parable of the weeds explained. The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The weeds are the sons of the evil one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. His enemy. His enemy. Satan is the enemy of the Son of Man, not you. You're irrelevant. Satan wants that seat. Oh, he'll use you to get that seat, but he don't care one thing about you. He doesn't care one bit about you. He's trying to be God. The harvest is the end of the age, 80-70. He knows he has but a short time, so he's really mad. Revelation 12. I say all that just to get back here to this point. When you take that and you generalize it and you make it, that's a perfectly fine, wonderful application of it. I wouldn't try to change you on a doctrinal position except on the one thing I was just talking about. But your application of it is going to be perfectly fine. The only problem I have is when you skip over the expositional work that we're trying to do today. And I hope you've heard me. I'm not trying to tell you I know definitively who the wicked and the evil are, whether the faith is a reference to just the gospel as a whole, or could it be a discussion of Judaistic theology, and so on. I don't know. I've got my ideas, but there is not a verb or a noun or even the appearance or disappearance of an article, something grammatical or something in this text that makes me say, okay, there it is. Sometimes there is. Like I just showed you, the harvest is the end of the age, not world, age. That is not a second coming text. That parable is a first century end of the age text. It's an AD 70 text because Jesus said age, eon, not cosmos. He didn't say that accidentally. He said it on purpose. See, there's a very specific argument that has me very definitive in my understanding of that text. I don't have that here. I have thoughts. But if you just took this and put it in, if it was by itself in isolation, and you wanted to make this text about the second coming, it would fit. But because you can't take it in isolation, when you read it and you skip over the expositional work that we're doing, you take that phrase, guard against the evil one, and if that evil one is Satan, you're going back to the life of Job or some version of that and thinking that is a possibility. Satan might be after me today. And I'm sorry, you cannot live your life with the kind of peace that passes all understanding if you think, even in some measured concept, that you might wake up on Tuesday, what is today? March 17th. Tuesday, March 17th might be the day that Satan has my name written down. If that is even slightly possible, you ain't living with a peace that passes understanding. No, you're not. So while you don't necessarily mess yourself up on the application in the doctrinal side, your application in a pragmatic life experience, you're hurting your faith in a way that you don't even, I don't think you do anyway, realize how much you're hurting your faith. Because you have that whole conception as a foundational element of the need of your faith. You understand what I just said there? I need to have a faith in God because there are things not flesh and blood things. Okay, I handle my own life. I got to pay my own bills. But there is a cosmic war going on for my soul every single day that I need the Holy Spirit or God or somebody to be watching out for me because I can't see it and I can't control it and so on. I'm telling you, that is not a peace that passes understanding. The cosmic forces going on is about the completion of, it's the mystery of God versus the mystery of lawlessness. It is the eternal plan of God. Make it 80-70, make it 84-76, don't care. But it's not second coming. The glorification of the saints in Daniel 7 is not second coming. It's early date, late date. It is the completion of the mystery of God. It is Jesus on the cross saying, "It is finished." And then the book of Revelation saying, was it 3 or 4 times in the book of Revelation? It is finished. It is finished. It is done. And none of it has to do with the second coming. Again, I live in 2026. I don't really care whether that's AD 70 or AD 476 from an application standpoint. I don't. But back to where we started this diatribe that I've been on now for an hour and a half. We don't do this very well in churches of Christ. We do not have a hard fork in the structure of the kingdom, the glorification of the saints from either AD 70 or AD 476. We don't. We still live like we still teach rather like we live in the same world that all of humanity has ever lived on. Not true. We don't. Because the mystery of God is finished. The saints of God have been glorified. The end of the ages has come and we're living in the blessings of it. You want to put that at 476? Great. I live in 2026. Almost 1600 years, 1550 years, actually, exactly 1550 years removed from it. So don't really care. Put it wherever you want to. Back there. Don't care. I live past it. Now, if you're a dispensational premillennialist, oh, I'm going to argue with you all day over it. But you're a Christian of the New Testament church. I need you to understand something. You have to go through. I'm not trying to change your application of these texts, except that I want you to go through the expositional challenge and learn the consequences of it. You don't need to be established and guarded the same way that they were going through the Great Tribulation. Because the Battle of Armageddon of Revelation 19 has already happened. And again, don't care. 476, 80, 70, doesn't matter. I'm in 2026, doesn't matter. It's already happened. That victory of Revelation 19, we've already won it. We are not in the same world you read about in your Bible. That is what I want you to get. That's the not agreement that I'm after, understanding. A conceptual, structural understanding of what your life should be like right now. That's what I want you to get. I'm telling you. It's not going to cure your cancer. It is not. But have mercy. It'll make your life so much more peaceful. Just will. I I would almost if I were a betting man, I would bet that my prayer life is entirely different than your prayer life. The number of things I ask God for. Most of the times when I ask God for something, when I actually ask God for something, because I'm praying for other people or I'm praying with other people. In my own personal conversations with God, I almost never ask Him for anything. Not never, but almost never. Not that I don't believe in prayer, not that I don't believe in God, so on and so forth. Nope, absolutely not. He is sovereign. He loves. He cares. Cast all your cares upon Him, for He cares for you. Although that is in 1 Peter 5. Interesting that it's there. Yeah, believe all of that. But there's almost nothing that happens in my life that's externally oriented that I think has any direct connection to my faith. It's just a world. It's the world I live in. Sometimes when a hurricane comes, it hits Florida. Sometimes it hits Texas. I've lived in both places. If I didn't want a hurricane to hit me, I'd move to some other place. There's a peace that passes understanding when you truly get to the truth, get down to it. Anyway, time and chance, Ronald said, happens to all men. Absolutely does. Hey, Jeevan, good to see you. David, you're right about the Satan thing. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, let's go ahead and finish up verses 4 and 5, and then I'm going to wrap this thing up. He says, and we have confidence in the Lord about you. Again, Paul talking back to the church of Thessalonica, that you are doing and will do the things that we command. Okay. I think that's an interesting statement there in verses 4 and 5. He should have confidence about them because go back to the first epistle. Okay. Go back and start at chapter 3 in the first epistle. Okay. We sent Timothy to you, left behind at Athens. That's Acts 17. Thessalonica, Berea, Athens, Paul to Corinth, Timothy and Silas back. Okay. Um, and he says, well, he came back basically. Well, he came back to establish and exhort you in your faith, that you not be moved by these afflictions. For yourselves know that we are destined to this. See, see, I can't help myself because there it is again. We are destined to this. And that's what these afflictions we are destined for. All that will live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. Go ahead and teach that. Go ahead and teach that. Because guess what you're going to do then? Every time something happens that falls in your category of afflictions, you're going to think it's because of your faith. Okay. And so when the hurricane starts coming, you're going to think, well, God's steering that. Well, is Satan steering that? No, I'm going to say I live in Florida. That's why the hurricane's coming. It's because I live in Florida. Because it's the weather. I'm not destined for it to suffer I'm just because I live in Florida. But nevertheless, Paul says about them, I got back in my diatribe. Okay. Paul says about them, we heard about the things that were going on there. Okay. And he's come from there, verse 6, and he's brought good news of your faith and your love. So he repeats it back here in chapter 3 here. We have confidence about you that you are doing, and then, of course, that you will do. Now, I do think it is interesting that he says that you will do these things, and then lo and behold, look at the ESV's heading for the next paragraph. A warning against idleness. So he is confident that they will continue to do it. But part of what he's about to command them is you need to be doing it. Don't sit around. Now that obviously next time we get together when we talk about it, that's where we'll be. We'll be talking about why they were being idle, and it's hard to separate it from what the first two chapters are about from the third chapter. Okay, so obviously as you get there, there are those we're going to see who are walking in idleness. That Paul says we were not idle when we were among you, and then go on down here. If anyone is not willing to work, neither let him eat. Okay, so that theme is going to be present here in that as well, um, and so on. Okay, um, so but he's writing good things to them, and then he says, verse 5, may the Lord direct your hearts to the love of God and the steadfastness of Christ. So that's where he kind of wraps it up and says, or I say wraps it up, finishes at least this portion of it. All right, you've got stuff going on. Pray for us that we may be able to go out and continue to spread the gospel around the world. And what happened among you, it's going to happen through the broader thing of it, the broader spreading of the gospel. Okay, and he says, be prayerful that these evil men obviously don't afflict me, because they did in Thessalonica, they did in Berea, and so on. Make sure they don't. Jewish or Roman, probably, yeah, it's Jewish or Roman. Could it be Judaizing? Could be. It's early for the full discussion of the influence of the Judaizing teachers. It's still pretty early. They had an impact in Jerusalem. They had an impact in Antioch, but this is early. Um, it's not as early as Galatians is later where it's happening. It's obviously later than what's happening in Corinth. Corinth had gotten fully involved in it. Um, but the circumcision party already did exist. They were there in Acts 11. They were there in Acts 15. Depending on what you do with the Peter's trip to Antioch, where you place that dating, they were there in Galatians 2. Either way, all the way there in Thessalonica. It's not as heavy in this book as as Paul's other epistles because again, it's early. But I would certainly say the seeds of it are there, and that might be a part of what's being talked about. Uh, with as we talked about, excuse me, as we talked about some as we went through chapter 2 for a couple 3 weeks. But that's where you'd go. Anyway, and so that's where Paul's trying to get them. All right. We got a couple comments down there. Let me just take a look at. Tammy says, "Thank you, appreciate you being there." David says he's got prostate cancer. Oh man, be keeping that, yes sir. Um, I just went yesterday get my had to get a head X-rayed because of all the stuff I've had wrong with my head. Because I'm about to start. I'm turning 55 next month. So guess what is on my agenda for this year? Colonoscopy and prostate MRIs and stuff, all that stuff. I'm about to start walking down that path in full song. Been that path a little bit, but I'm about to go down that path full song. Joy of turning 55, right? So that is all in my future. I, I hope I won't be joining you, David. I hope I won't. What you got down here? Who is that? Mercy. Hope we can expound on who should not be idle and subsequently not eat when we next meet. We will. We will spend some time talking about that right quick and in a hurry. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up a little early today. Actually, it's quite a bit early. One of the earliest wrap ups I've done, but at least in part because um, and you notice I didn't mention anything on the TikTok side today. TikTok does not like my live streams because live streams through one of the service I use, which is called Restream, booted over to TikTok, um, needs to be about gaming about 50% of the time is the rule they have. And lo and behold, I did 2 or 3 live streams here talking about the Bible, and that has been banned. So I can't take this stream and put it on TikTok otherwise. But let me just say for those who are watching, I hate to say it out loud, but you need to be on TikTok because there is a group of brothers and sisters, a lot of preachers, but some other people, some of our sisters as well, all the time, almost 24 hours a day now on TikTok, just doing evangelism streams. I've done several. That's what I'm about to do. I'm going to turn off here, take a little break, and then I'm going to be on TikTok live, just talking about baptism, doing an evangelism type stream, um, baptizing people left and right. It happened here. I was kind of odd. It went the other direction. Since I go on and do those teaching streams occasionally, I thought maybe I would have one that I would send to somebody else, but it went the other direction around. We had, I was on Sunday night. I was just sitting at my desk. I was doing some modeling. I do that from time to time. I was building a little Corsair. If you want to know what I was building a Corsair, and I was watching a stream. I was just somebody was on just talking, just more of a fellowship than evangelism. We were just sitting there talking, and then lo hold about 10:30. Um, somebody popped in, and it was a guy named Shane Fisher. You know, Shane's been in some of the streams occasionally. You might know Shane if you've been on Digital Bible Study some. He had been studying with a guy for a couple of times, and that guy said, "I want to get baptized." And guess where the guy lived? I live in Melbourne, Florida. He was in Palm Bay, Florida. And so that night, I gave that dude a call. It was Sunday night, and about 11 o'clock or so, we started talking. And about midnight, he came. We both had to drive a little ways to get up here to the Rockledge Church building. And Julie came, my wife came, David Kaufman, who's in the room, who's been in the room today, he came along. Um, and right at midnight on Sunday night, we baptized. His name's Emilio, and it came off of the TikTok evangelism. I mean that group, 1 or 2 a day. They're connecting with people and baptizing people all over the world, all over the country. It is incredible. So Yeah, there's a lot of junk on TikTok. There is. But the way they do live streams over there, it's like y'all can comment to me, right? But if one of you wanted to raise your hand and say, "Hey, can I come in and be a part of the stream?" I could theoretically do it, but it'd be hard. Okay, I couldn't do it through Facebook or YouTube. I'd have to do it through the service that I use called Restream. I could do it, but it would take 5 minutes at minimum to get you connected. Okay, whereas in TikTok, the way TikTok is designed, anybody's watching the stream can say, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And what happens is that somebody says, "Hey, I want to talk," and bang, it turns into a Bible study. It's incredible. You got to see it. If you haven't seen it yet, you need to. What you got there? Somebody asked, "What's your name on TikTok?" My name is just Jonathan Jenkins. I think the actual handle is, I think it's, well, hold on, I can pull it up here. Give me a second. Me. How do I find me? I need my profile. I can actually show you too. I think I can just bring that over. Can I do that? Hold on, let me bring it back here. I need to go to this one. I don't know if that's big enough for y'all to see it or not. Um, but that's my profile. Let's see if I can make the text bigger. Okay, there it is. So the name there is just obviously my name, but the handle is Jonathan Jenkins 482, and then it's just an old picture of Julie and me when we lived in Texas. Okay, so that's who I am. Okay, but it's quite amazing in terms of just the evangelistic. It has interesting though. Those of us who have been doing it, we have started seeing a lot of people because we'll put up things that just say baptism is essential for salvation. It's amazing how many people we are now seeing that have slides up that say baptism is not for salvation or whatever version of that they come up with. Maybe it's just the algorithm, TikTok algorithm now showing those feeds to us. I guess that's possible, but we kind of think it's the other thing around because there are so many members of the Church of Christ who are starting to do this that other people are trying to put a stop to it, trying to it's fun. It's fun to watch. So anyway, get on there, check it out, and you don't have to. I mean, you could do one yourself. It's not hard. It is not hard. It's very informal. It's very laid back. Um, I mean, I've seen guys on there having Bible studies, working in the kitchen, cooking. I've said Paul Mays is on there. Paul Mays is always doing all kind of crazy stuff because he's out there working in his yard. He was replacing the bumper cover on his car one time. He's just out there. Just it's not like a formal Bible class. It's just an open discussion, and that's why I think that's why it's so effective evangelistically. So anyway, I'm gonna pop on here in a little while and maybe do one of those. So if you're on TikTok, come and follow me over there. But that's part of the reason I'm wrapping it up a little short here. Hey, Travis is there. Good to see you, Travis. Um, what you got to say there, Travis? Glad to see church fan on TikTok. I share it when I'm on. Good deal. Um, yep, yeah, that's true. You got to choose your junk on TikTok just like Facebook. You got to skip past the junk, and you do. You do. Okay. Anyway, let's wrap that up there. And I will, Lord willing, see you. Oh, just FYI, I said it at the beginning. Let me say it here at the end. I will not be here Thursday. All right. No class on Thursday. All right. We'll be back here again. Hopefully, I think we'll probably be finishing up Second Thessalonians next time on Tuesday because there's not a lot left in that chapter. We're in the last chapter. We might even finish it up early because it's not very heavy on the doctrinal side. It's the closing comments. Got to talk about the idleness there, um, and the marking of some people, that kind of stuff. But from a doctrinal standpoint, shouldn't be that difficult to get through unless I go off on another diatribe again, which I always do. So we'll see. And still need your input. Um, really, the only input I've gotten so far is James. I saw John had something about the sovereignty of God, but I don't have that organized. That's it would be a good study. It'd be a good study, but I don't have that organized. So that would take a lot of work on my part that I don't really want to do right now. um, but give me some input if you have any thoughts about where you want to go. But I, unless there's objections to James, I might just be going there unless somebody gives me something else that rings the bell for me. So anyway, I'll stop her there, and Lord willing, we will see you back here next Tuesday. And as always, look forward to being there with you. And it is my prayer that you'll go out and make your day a great one for God.